Hey guys, financial education here. Today we're going to look at what IPOs are, in what cases companies might use them, and what is the current situation in this whole financial industry of IPOs. First, we have to understand what IPOs are actually an acronym for and what they are. IPOs stand for Initial Public Offering, which means that it's the first time that a private corporation is giving out its shares to the public, which means that it's going from a private company to a public company. This is done for the company to raise capital. It can be done afterwards when the company is public, when it wants to issue more shares, but the first time that they do it, it's called IPO. And it's a very big deal in the financial industry as it helps companies to raise capital when they're big and they can get money from the public and they can start pursuing bigger projects and getting more investors, which we'll look at in a second. First we have to understand why companies would choose to do this. The first reason and the main one is to raise capital. And raising capital is the number one reason as the companies see that selling out equity, which we'll come back to a second as well, selling equity to the public is the best way for them to raise capital as they see that their firm is well valued and they can start new projects, they can increase their revenue through this, and so on. The biggest IPO ever in history was done by Saudi Aramco, which was an astronomical amount of $25.6 billion, which is considered to be a lot, but compared to the percentage of the company that they have actually given to the public, with their company valued at 1.8 trillion, it's not as much as other big IPOs like Alibaba's IPO, which was previously the biggest IPO in history. So first we have to understand why companies would choose to do this over debt financing. So a company can get capital from two ways: debt or equity. Debt financing is basically a company taking a loan, which means that it will, for example, take $1 million at 3% interest rate. If the company wants to give out equity, for example, it will give out 10% for $1 million. They will get the same thing, their $1 million, but from different ways. In this case, the company would choose to do this if they see that the current debt market is very cheap and the capital that they can get is really cheap, and so they will choose to do this. And from the equity side, if they see that the company is overvalued, or if they see that they can tell other firms that their company is valued at a higher amount than the market is, then they might choose this. It all depends on where the company is, where the whole market is with financing, and so they have to understand this first before choosing to go public. Sorry for going on a tangent. I just wanted to make it clear which one of these this is. IPOs are. IPOs are part of equity financing as they're giving out equity to the public and raising capital through that. The second reason why they might choose to go public is from pressure. Pressure from their investors, VCs, or other investors. Investors. This was seen with Snapchat's parent company, Snap, and this was when investors were telling the company to go public, to go and offer their shares to the public so that they can sell their shares and make profit on them. This is the main way VCs actually make money, is that they have 10-year contracts, or their funds are 10 years long. So they plan on one day selling. Plan is to sell, not to keep for long term like Warren Buffett. So they will choose to wait until the right time comes, for example with Snapchat or Uber or Lyft, and tell the companies to go public so they can sell and make their profit from that. So these are the two reasons why companies might choose to go public, but then we have to look at the pros and cons of going public. Well, I'll do this in green so it can be easier. The pros. Pro number one and the most obvious one is raising capital. Raising capital. This allows firms to introduce new projects and also to increase their revenue. However, we'll come back to the cons as well. This will be when the company would go up in value, and so it might not actually be as good as debt financing, but we'll look over this later. And number two is another pro is that they can now start using their shares as more or less cash. This means that they can use their most illiquid, so not as easy to use as cash or very expensive to use as cash currency, their equity, their value, as a very liquid part of their company, as they can not give out, nobody would want to get for example, truck in return for their company, but getting 10,000 shares that you can freely trade at 10% market value, at $10 market value, that's much better than getting a truck, for example. So it frees up a lot of capital that the firm has tied itself up with at market value, massive market values with like Amazon and Microsoft and Apple, and start buying companies. For example, you can see many deals where it's not just cash for the company, but more like cash plus stocks is then equal to the company. Usually these stocks have like 6 months stop selling period where the people who get them can sell them, but it's all up to the deal. But it's this very good way of making their most illiquid assets very liquid. And third, not as popular reason to why companies might choose to go public is to be under more investors, which will allow them to be under more ideas, which will allow them to grow and always be under pressure. So the investors will always want the company to grow, which would mean that they would always want the company to do better, which would mean that the board of directors wouldn't want to wait until something happens, or they would want to innovate. They wouldn't want the company to go and buy cars or planes, but they would want innovation. By the way, for the share to cash liquidity part, this is very, very important if the company is going up in price value of their shares, as this will allow them to get very cheap capital, as they would have done before. If they wouldn't have done that before if they didn't have this. But there are some cons that have to do with IPOs, which are, number one, they cost a lot. Companies such as Goldman Sachs that do this charge a lot of money to help companies go public, and this will cost a lot. But if the company is big enough, I think they can outlast this cost, and it's actually better for the company. But it's just gonna cost many millions for the company to go public, and that's why nowadays big companies just go public. Another con with this is that their financial data is always available to everyone, even their competitors, which is that the competitors can see competitors can always see what they're doing, which might not be the best case. But again, it's offset by the amount of capital that they're raising, and it costs a lot to upkeep. This means that the company is under much more regulation, as it is a public company now, and SEC in USA wouldn't want something like Enron happening again, which I can't bring up right now because it's a very, very big story, but you can search on it on Google. And they wouldn't want something like this to happen again, so they are under much more regulation to keep this, and the people who do the work for this costs a lot of money, they have big salaries, so in the upkeep of being public, it's going to cost a lot of money. And maybe the biggest problem with going public is short-termism. This is when the company is not looking at the next 10 years, but the next quarter. And this is very bad in the sense that the company is only looking to increase profit in the short run and not looking at increasing revenue in the long run. This is very bad for the company's future, as they might not want to innovate but actually cut costs or do things that are more short-termism and not look outwards. Exceptions to this rule have been Amazon, which for the last 20 years has been focusing on the long run, and until recently hasn't been making any profit at all, and as well as Adobe, which when they changed their model from selling their service to a subscription model, they lost a lot of value, but they got a lot of money back from quarters of them showing much greater returns, which was a very, very bad decision in the short term as the stock price plummeted, but in the long run it went much higher than it used to be. And finally, we have to look at the current situation in this financial instruments industry. Well, the current situation is that companies wait much longer until they go public. In one sentence, this is everything that's happening currently in the IPO industry. Even though there are bigger firms coming out, even though the whole market of IPOs is becoming bigger, the number of companies is going actually down, and the companies that are going public wait much more than the companies that used to go public. For example, when Amazon went public, it was much younger, like 5 years, 6 years. Companies wait that long. Now the companies might wait 10 years until they go public, which can, I think, mostly be attributed to very cheap finances from VC companies. For example, SoftBank, where they finance many firms to go as far as they can in the private sector until they go into the public. A great example is Uber, failed We company, which failed in not going public, and Lyft, Snapchat. These companies waited much longer to go public, and this was most probably due to them having capital available from the VCs. And IPOs have become more of when the company is in the billions, then it should go public, not when it's in its millions. So we have to look at it that way as well. So yeah, thank you for watching. Write down in the comment section what you want me to do next. We're gonna post videos. We'll try to post videos every day for anyone who's trying to learn about finance. Thank you for watching again. Subscribe. Have a good day.